Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is the Futurists by Allegiance Arts, written by Patrick Stiles, art by Butch Guice, and colors and inks by a lot of people. Looks like inks were done by Butch for the first 10 pages, and then Rick Magyar did the last bit. Colors by both Mitch and Elizabeth Brettweiser and Alex Guimarães. Oh man, I hope I said that right. Letters by, of course, Eric Weathers of Comicsgate fame. So, The Futurists. This is the last book in the 3-pack for the Founders edition of Allegiance Arts. And I saved it for last, not because it's the best, but actually, unfortunately, it's because it's probably the worst. And I'll explain why. It's not all bad, but I do want to mention there's something really important that you're going to see on the first 2 pages here. So you're going to see the writer is Patrick Stiles, the editor is Patrick Stiles, and this is the biggest problem with the book in a nutshell. You'll find it right on page 1, because this book needs a separate editor. So to get in, you get kind of cut into this cutscene right here. You get introduced to these bunch of party kids, British soldiers and their ladies. They go to this sort of magic house, kind of like a magician sort of setup. Magician spews a bunch of weird horse shittery. They're about to do something, some sort of occult-like deal. By the way, this is set in, the setting is 1800s colonial India. So again, this is a historical comic book, as all of the Allegiance Arts. This in particular is supposedly about Shambhala, but you'll find out really quickly we don't really talk a lot about that till literally the last page. Again, nobody gets introduced. It's just a bunch of it just throws you in media res, and it's not good. It really isn't good. If there is a book in all of Allegiance Arts lineups that needs an editor and needs a lot of narration boxes, like a lot of narration boxes, it's The Futurist. This book is really confusing. You jump around and you have to infer and just really you got to really pay attention to this book. And honestly, even paying attention, you're kind of lost at what the hell's going on. So some weirdness goes on in their occult action. The soldiers run away. This guy shows up, and you're not really introduced, and then eventually you finally figure out who it is. It's this kid who I don't even know who he is, but he is on the front page, so you figure he's important. He asks for an oracle. The oracle is dead. And then they go into some discussion about how he's actually supposed to be really, really old, but he's young. Why is he young? Because magic drains you and makes you old like this guy. It's not really shown, you're just told that. There is a really big disconnect between what the artist is trying to show and what the writer is trying to convey. And it goes back to that this needs an editor. Like, it needed to go back into editing, and it needed to be like, okay, yeah, you know what, if this is what the writer wants and the artist needs to show this, or if this is, or maybe even question what the writer was trying to do here. I don't know. So we get ported back in time, a flashback to, what is this? This is about like 30 years ago? No, about 10 or so, or 9 or so years ago. So here we are, we're dealing, so here we got some both Scottish and British soldiers. They're one of their buddies has been shot or ambushed by what they call a Thugi. Again, I actually am very fond of like Hindu mythology. I'm not really a big history buff when it comes to colonial Britain or colonial India, so a lot of this stuff is just going right over my head. Again, this needs narration boxes. Like, a lot of times you'll see, like in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or a lot of manga, if they're going to use historical events, they'll have usually a paragraph or a box that explains or gives a quick synopsis of what the background is. In this case, all you get is this is the day and the date, which actually doesn't matter if you're being honest with yourself, and then somewhere in some province in India. Well, it would be nice to know, okay, why is the date relevant? Why is this province in India relevant? Etc. Otherwise, you might as well have not told me that. I don't know. I'm being a little harsh because I wanted to try to like this because the cover is dope. This is a dope-ass cover. But unfortunately, this is probably going to be an example of a book at Walmart where the cover's going to sell it more than the story on the inside. So we get a little intrigue. Their superior officer comes and says, "Hey, we can't, lose face. Shoot him in the head or something like that to make it seem like he was actually killed and not ambushed by one of these guys." And they're in the middle of an expedition, digging some treasure out. Also, by the way, the art flow is a little bit weird here. So they're pulling out this almost sarcophagus or something, and you get, this is actually not bad art. By the way, the art is kind of a little bit inconsistent. You can sort of tell when it changes artists, because in the beginning it's very, the color, the art is very washed a little bit, or scratchy, and then it gets a little more heavier with the newer artist or the newer inker. I don't know. I'm really confused going through this thing. So anyhow, they talk about a little bit of side intrigue, and then for whatever reason, the commanding officer decides to kill all of his laborers. And while they're doing that, the Scotsmen are kind of like, "Oh, well, nothing we can do," until one of the Scotsmen's like, "Well, I'm going to grab this gunpowder keg and chuck it over." It's actually kind of confusing. And he's going to toss this at somebody until he... wait, does he toss it at the... Okay, so he breaks open the sarcophagus. See, this is what I'm talking about. He breaks open the sarcophagus, and out comes freaking, super demon, probably something from Sojourn. And this guy basically wrecks all the British soldiers, and the Scotsman, Lieutenant Gunn, his name is, by the way, he goes out to... by the way, I missed it. I didn't say this a while back, but this was the panel that I decided to do my art on. I'll talk about it later. So Scotsman's the only one with the balls to face this demon down, and he uses like gunpowder and swords and shit. He's able to kind of use the gunpowder keg to blow up everything and I guess survive. And then the aftermath is there's a fire. His woman, I guess, or his wife is looking for him. He's kind of in a medical or a hospital right here, and this looks like a... I think this is the commanding officer. Is this the commanding officer? Yeah, I think this is the commanding officer, and he's ordering this one guy to murder him in his sleep, I guess to hide some sort of secret that they were going after. I don't know. Nothing's explained. This is almost more confusing than House of X. Not yet there. He's able to turn the tables on him, though it's really, really, like, the jump from here to here is a little bit jarring. And then so him and Lieutenant Gunn and the commanding officer go after each other, and then all of a sudden he starts talking about Shambhala and eternal life, and then this is the last page, and you're left with him looking at his wife as he's about ready to kill his commanding officer. So it's kind of a shocking thing. So yeah, is the story complete? No, it's half of a story that I actually don't know a lot of the background to. Right. So, what do I think of it? Like I said before, needs serious editing, and I don't know, man. I personally, I wasn't really pulled into it. The action was decent. The art actually was a little bit inconsistent to confusing at times. I don't know. It felt like the artist and the writer were not on the same page. And that was kind of my feeling of this. Again, in my opinion, definitely the weakest issue of the three pack. I would say overall, as a total package, Bass Reeves was the best. Nora Saga right after that. Nora Saga only being a little bit weaker as far as structure and story, because it gives you half of a story. This is by far the worst. So yeah, the art is it's interesting. It's digital art. I'm not a huge fan of the pastels. Like this is all, it just kind of muddies up a lot, and you just don't really, like, I don't know, nothing really pops in this the first time something pops, like this guy right here, he pops out of the page, but for some reason they put him in the middle for a double page spread. And then this guy kind of pops. I kind of wish he would have had more saturation. And these pages where the action is going on, it's kind of nice, but even then it's still a lot of red and not a lot of contrast. I don't know, man. Yeah, I hate to be mean to this comic, but I got to be honest, man. I had a hard time finishing this. I could not really get into it. Uh, so I definitely will not be continuing this if I see the second issue in Walmart. I'm just not really feeling it, to be honest. Anyhow, how did I do? Let's take a look. So this is Lieutenant Gunn. The first thing I noticed when I look back on this is the eye is screwed up. I think he needs to be a little more circular and a little bit smaller. I think this is a little too big because it's pulling into the foreground. It needs to be smaller. Otherwise, it looks flat, and this kind of like his eyes look flat. That was like the first thing I noticed. I had a kind of a hard time dealing. So the artist style is very, very. If you take a look at the artist style, is very, very. It's hard to see maybe through the camera, but it's very, very scratchy. And I have very solid inks, so it's not really my style. So I captured kind of the essence of the panel. I just screwed up the eyes. So not a good drawing, not good art, but you know, kind of improving. And it makes me kind of think about different styles and how I'm gonna have to approach them in the future. But yeah, that's Lieutenant Gunn, and that's the Futurist. And yeah, I don't know, man. Not really feeling it, just being honest. Anyhow, that's the review. Let me know what you think. If you like this review, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. If you have any comments on the Futurist, Allegiance Arts, or my art, or this story, please leave them down below. And I will see you next time.